Hello everyone from New York City and welcome to today's session, A Hacker's Perspective, Remote Work Risks. My name is Guy Franklin and I'm the Managing Director of SOSA NYC Innovation Hub, which is operating the Global Cyber Center of the City of New York in partnership with the NYC, which is the New York City Economic Development Corporation, with the goal of transforming New York City to become a global leader in cybersecurity. In these days, the NYC is working hard in supporting the huge efforts with all relates to the COVID-19 virus here in New York City. Let's wish them all the best. Today's event is one out of a series of events that the Global Cyber Center is doing in the last year in partnership with the organization Cyber Ladies NYC, led by Sivan Tehila, in order to promote women in cyber. This webinar is the first that is online. Today, we are honored also to partner with our friends from the Israeli Economic Mission to North America, Inonel Roy, Tamar Shlimak, and the rest of the team, and with Perimeter 81. Without further ado, let's first welcome Tamar Shlimak, Director of Cyber and FinTech at the Israel Economic Mission to the East Coast, to say a few words. Tamar, the stage is yours. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you, Guy. Welcome, everyone. It is my privilege to partner with the Global Cyber Center, leading Cyber Ladies Perimeter 81 on probably one of the most challenging and relevant.
Oh, we lost you, Tamar. Let's wait a minute. Tamar, are you with us? You're on mute.
Well, she just said that it's a challenging time, so...
Okay, Tamar, you can continue. Go ahead.
Hello. Sorry about that. So, yeah, one of the most challenging topics these days, which is remote work and how to secure remote work. So we're very happy to partner today with SOSA and Perimeter and leading Cyber Ladies. In our mission, we work vigorously these days to help continue the business relationships between Israel and US. And obviously these days it's very challenging for all of us to continue business. However, we partner and host many webinars at all sectors, and whoever is willing and want to partner with us, please reach out to me or to Inonel Roy directly. And I'm happy to just partner with all those esteemed partners to educate you on this very important topic. So Guy, take it back. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you, Tamar. Thank you, Tamar. As you can see, we have today two experts with us. First, Sivan Tehila, our partner to this event, Director of Solution Architecture at Perimeter 81 and founder of Cyber Ladies NYC, and Nicole Becher, Director of Information Security and Risk Management at S&P Global Platts. Let's move to our agenda for today. So we are going to cover how hackers can take advantage of our new remote work reality, 5 essential tips to help remote work secure, and then we will move to Q&A. We got some Q&A before the webinar starts during the registration, and you are welcome to ask some questions during the webinar, and we will try to answer them in the last 10 minutes. Before we start, I would just like to fill the audience and to ask 2 questions. So the first one, you will see it on the screen in a minute. Just a second. So you have, so where are you joining us from? You see the answer, the question right now. Soon we'll see the answer, so you can reply. Let's see the results. Oh, just a second. I see that it didn't work well. Okay, I'll try another question. If not, we'll move on. Although I see on the side that a lot of people are from the US, see people from Europe, from the UK. So let's move on. with starting the webinar and the questions. So first, with the current situation, we see more and more attacks that are taking advantage of the current situation. I would say that the fast transformation to a remote workforce inevitably brings a whole suite of risks and challenges. Hackers are ready to pounce on these situations to exploit organizations, employees, data, and so on and so on. I would like to refer the first session to Nicole, but before that, you can see some of the headlines that all of them are from the last month about attacks that happened. We can see from the time that key US health agencies suffered cyber attack during coronavirus response, and hackers are using coronavirus maps to infect your computer, and so on and so on. And everyone is taking advantage, all the hackers are taking advantage of the situation. So let's move to the first question. I would like to refer it to Nicole. How a hacker can exploit remote work environment. And then Nicole, if you can share with us what you experienced or some of the events that occurred recently with regards to the current situation.
Sure, thanks, Guy. Am I audible? Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, so I mean, as much as a lot has changed, you know, the attack environment sort of, you know, it kind of remains mostly the same. I mean, there's obviously been an explosion in phishing emails just because there's a ton of topics that you can phish on these days, right? You phish on, you know, there was a WHO phishing email around like here, click here to learn how to protect yourself from COVID. There's spear phishing going around that says somebody in your organization has tested positive for COVID. Please click here to like fill out your name in some sheet. You know, and a lot of this can be used to either steal credentials or serve up malware. And we're used to this, right? This is how phishing kind of works. It's just there's an explosion of topics to phish on now, which kind of, and they all sort of create a lot of urgency, right? So there's just going to be an increasingly, you know, like dire situation around how much awareness we need to have around phishing. So I don't know if that could be overstated. I think that at this point, both personal, personal user, personal emails and corporate emails are going to be equally as, susceptible to this. And I think just, not clicking on these documents, ignoring them, verifying things first before you click on them, all the typical topics we use, typical sort of solutions we have to combat, phishing should be in place here. The other thing is, a corporate environment has a lot of network controls, right? There's network monitoring controls, there's SSL interception controls, there's all sorts of ways that you could control that environment. And now with everyone not there, the control environment is totally different, right? We're at home, we don't have corporate firewalls, we don't have DLP, we don't have, all these things, right? So if you're off your corporate network, as in not VPN'd in, you're in a very different kind of control environment there. So, for an attacker standpoint, to be able to get malware onto a machine that is in a weakened control environment, it's probably something that is desirable, right? Because what network evidence or what network-based controls would detect this, right? If you were able to get this on a machine. I mean, there's obviously the endpoint controls that are there, but the network controls probably are not there. Again, a lot of this is highly dependent on how the corporate network is set up. Some people are, really reliant on corporate VPNs and all traffic goes through that VPN. So that might be a stronger control environment than those that are sort of relying more on cloud services and not on the corporate VPN. So there's not like a one true answer here, but there is a lot of things to consider there as, attackers are going to want to try to take advantage of that situation. The other thing is just the attack surfaces of the tools that we're migrating to. Zoom is like, I don't know, suddenly became the most exciting chat platform, right? And everyone's using it. And so now people are rigorously looking at Zoom to try to find problems with Zoom, the software. There was one yesterday around, if you put a special link in a Zoom chat bar and it's a Windows / link, it could actually prompt you to send over your Windows credentials to an attacker, right? These things probably hadn't been thought about earlier because nobody, had the desire to look at it. But now that they do, there might be some more issues that people will uncover with Zoom as a platform, aside from just Zoom bombing and not putting a password on your meeting and all the basic hygiene things. There could be some deeper problems with Zoom that we'll uncover during this time. There's also Zoom malware that's going around, like, click here, people spearfish organizations and say, hey, organization, now that we're using Zoom, please click here to download the trusted Zoom client. And that's probably not the trusted Zoom client. It's some, piece of malware that they're trying to get onto your computer. Again, like there's just a lot of different narratives that, scammers and phishers can use here to get you to do something. There's a stimulus, there's people scamming around the stimulus package. There's people scamming around, hospital donations. There's people scamming around, your COVID positive status. I mean, it's just pretty endless here, right? And so I think that, the vigilance just needs to be there around phishing, and just don't click on things if you, just don't open DOCM files from email or, Word documents through email. Report them to your corporate security teams if you have them. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough problem. It's a really tough problem.
Okay, so so you mentioned the events. We saw some examples. What are your observations? Home is less secured by design. You mentioned. So what you can say about your observation from all the events, in addition to what you said about the cloud and the remote access designed by corporates?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're using cloud services and they're just accessible on the internet, the best control out there is probably multi-factor authentication, right? And I think Sivan's going to talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, ensure that all of that is in place, right? There should be no cloud service that you can access without more than one factor of authentication. There's just again, like I can't overstate the phishing because it just seems to be endless. But yeah, there's just, trying to be more mindful of, how you talk about, sensitive corporate kind of activities, right, in your home. If you live with roommates, like I think a lot of organizations are challenged right now. Like, do you have board meetings over Zoom? Is that okay? Like, I don't know if that's okay, right? Is there a better, more secure channel to have a board meeting if that's what you have to do? And you have to sort of think these things through, right? Like, now that everything's changed and we're moving to this remote kind of environment here, you sort of need to do that risk assessment around the vendors and the SaaS products that you bring in to try to support your organization during that time, to see if it's reasonable for you to transmit or transact, highly critical business functions over a potentially insecure channel, right? And what can you do to not do that? Is there another technology, or is there a corporate VPN that you could use, or is there something else you could use to transact that? So it's just being sort of more mindful. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole. That leads me exactly to the next question to Sivan. So basically, after hearing from Nicole, Sivan, about the risks and the different attacks that can happen, I would like to ask you, what is your take on that, and how we can all be more ready and prepared? And I will just say that there is a question from the audience. I will just read it. If you were going to suggest 5 high-impact things, what would they be? Which is exactly, I think, what you are talking about. So it's match the question from the audience. So Sivan.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Nikki. I'm so excited about this webinar. And I think it's extremely important for everyone, end users and companies, to adopt the right security procedures during the current situation. I was thinking about the situation and cyber attacks and the coronavirus, and I think that the main similarity between both are that we're actually dealing with uncertainty. And I mean, when we're talking about cybersecurity, we usually say that there are 2 types of organizations: those who have been attacked and those who just don't know that they have been attacked. And how can we be prepared, and what should be done? I hope we're gonna give you some practical tips during the session. And the first thing is, in my opinion, is to make sure you are doing the right adjustments to your business continuity plan. I mean, as Nicole said, the first thing that companies thought to do is first downloading Zoom, but now we see that there are so many risks and vulnerabilities that attackers are taking advantage in this current situation, while everyone are using Zoom or other, video conference applications. And having said that, I mean, of course, that it's important for your company first to function and work remotely, but if you're not protecting your infrastructure and your resources, so maybe you can cause even more damage than just not working at all. I don't know. So that's something that companies need to take into consideration. And regarding the Zoom or you know those risks, we've seen many Zoom booming events recently, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later. And talking about adjustment to your business continuity plan, it's also the implementation of the right security solutions to be able to monitor the network, to monitor the activity of your users, and to make sure to protect not only the perimeter, but also inside the network. And I'm gonna dive into it in the other tips that I'm gonna share with you. So I think that the first step, and maybe that's the simple, easy, and maybe the cheapest way to protect your perimeter, is first to create strong passwords and to enable and enforce two-factor authentication for your users. And when we say strong passwords, I think I also saw something, someone who asked about passwords managers. And it's a good question because we require everyone to put passwords, strong passwords on all their accounts, and then people are not remember the passwords. So I do recommend to use passwords manager, but still you'll need to create a strong password and remember it for your passwords manager account. And when we're talking about two-factor authentication, it can be done by require an SMS or a push notification when you're trying to get access into your account, or using Google Authenticator and or other features and security solutions that they hire in the market. And also recommend to use identity provider. And I'm going to talk about that also later. For the end users and for people here who are not, managing the security in the company, when I'm saying strong passwords, it means that you should create a password with at least 12 characters to make sure that the passwords include numbers, symbols, capital letters, and lowercase letters, and try not to use obvious and common substitutions. So that's for now with this tip. Phishing email. I think that was one of the parts that I liked the most when I worked in different companies, because everyone, we're human being, and it can happen to anyone. We're clicking on links as long as the hacker draft the right email with the right scenario. So it's very easy to become a victim, and it's also a cheap way for the hackers and the attackers to get the personal information about people and companies. And we see that malicious phishing email traffic is up for 167% under a month, with hackers that exploiting the COVID-19 fears. So there is an increase with phishing emails recently, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic. But I think that when I posted the webinar in my social media, I wrote the sentence, that's it's just not out of scope for the hackers. They don't really care if it's a global pandemic. They're just taking advantage of the situation to get their, to get their goal. And I actually feel, I feel the stress from when I'm working now with customers. I think I talked about it with Nicole earlier this week, that we're lucky to work in in this industry now, working as a cybersecurity experts to help companies to protect themselves. And I know maybe it sounds dramatic to say it, but I feel we are kind of helping companies to win the war of the coronavirus. And by being aware of all those risks and help your people being aware of the risks and give them the right tips to protect themselves, I think that's the right thing to do. And again, it's not the responsibility of the IT managers or the CISO, it's the responsibility of the managers and CEOs, and of course, of each one of the employees for the company. Nikki, if you want to add anything about phishing or training and awareness, I think you'll probably have good tips and insights to share here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this doesn't deviate too much from the traditional information security training and awareness programs, but I think that, just making it clear on how enterprise users can report suspicious emails, like just reinforcing that behavior over and over again so that, they do get into that habit of reporting things that don't look right. And then you have that visibility as to what your users are seeing, because any enterprise just needs that sort of visibility. You want people to report as much as possible if they see things that are suspicious. So, reinforcing that. And I think, as people settle into the technology stacks that they're going to deploy remotely, just again, keep socializing the best way to securely deploy that technology, like Zoom, like make sure Zooms have passwords, right? Like, that's important, right? And just, again, socializing the new awareness that needs to happen here around like configuring things and making sure that whatever stack you guys are going to use is configured in a way that meets the requirements here, right?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe to continue that with Zoom have an option to add a password to your meetings. Another option is to just use the waiting room, and then you can control who is getting into your meeting. And there is also an option to block the screen sharing from your participants. So only the host can actually use the share his screen. And another thing I think we were talking about, Nikki, before the webinar is with the shadow IT term, that usually it refers to the security devices or network components that are not managed by the central IT department of an organization. And while we were talking about that, I figured out that I'm sitting here right near my Alexa, and then we're sitting at home. We don't really know who is listening. Probably all of us are using Alexa or other things like that, or I don't know if anyone is protecting his home router or network with using passwords or anything else. And I mean, I just take a look yesterday in the Shodan. I don't know if you're familiar with that website, but it's a website that can show you all the open webcams and ports all over the world. And people are sitting at home today. People are using webcams, and it's so interesting to see how people are actually not aware of what's going on in their home and website. It's crazy. I mean,
well, hopefully everyone has a router that has natting on it. It's kind of always surprising how these webcams find their way onto the public internet, but yeah, they do. Yeah, and I guess you're right. I mean, the home becomes an entire shadow IT environment there, right? Like, I think there was that story about the lawyers that are supposed to turn off Alexa so that it doesn't sort of continually record confidential and privileged information, right? I mean, things like that. Nobody ever thought of that, and again, it's just, as people work at home and, there's other devices around, trying to be really mindful of the data sprawl, and that, the company data doesn't sprawl onto, your daughter's Chromebook and then, your son's iPad and things like that, that it sort of stays in this contained environment. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. People have to compromise here, right? People are, compromising to get work done, and we just want to be mindful that the data isn't spilling out onto more insecure devices, which will cause problems down the road.
Yeah. So the next thing that I think that's when we're saying the next step after downloading Zoom and protect your network is to have the right solution to encrypt your data in transit and data at rest. And adopting cloud agnostic, scalable solution instead of the legacy VPN, that could be the best way, to have the option to encrypt your data and to mask your identity, but with the option to scale. And, those legacy security solutions have been put on to the test with this month. And I think that the main reason that they failed is primarily because they are not scalable. So, I mean, it's good to have a VPN. It's better to have a legacy VPN than don't have anything that protect your network. But adopting a solution which is an holistic solution that gives you an option to monitor and to gain complete visibility of your users' activity, that's the right thing to do. And I think that the easiest way for me to explain it and the differences between the legacy VPNs and the new solutions is to present this architecture that is, we call it user-centric solution or user-centric architecture. Because in the past, we used to be more focused or centered around the headquarters. And now when more people are working remotely, and I think, by the way, it's not gonna, I think the world is gonna change. I think we're gonna keep working remotely and things are not gonna be the same. Right? We're kind of living in the middle of the digital transformation age, and it's a revolution that happens faster than we could imagine. So having a user-centric solution, it's relevant not only for the current situation, but I think that from now on, that's how companies should work. And as you can see here, I'll try to show you to explain the details. So the user in the middle is actually trying to get access to the resources, not only on-prem, but also in the cloud, and using more web applications and resources that he hosts in different environments. And the IT manager should have control and visibility for his users' activity. And the right way to do that is to be able to monitor and get logs and to connect securely to those different environments. I mentioned before that a single sign-on, two-factor authentication. So if you can have a solution that gives you visibility, protecting your data at rest and in transit, and monitor the activity, that's the best. If you can, if you're using an identity provider like Azure AD or other identity providers, so make sure to integrate with this, and also to have the option to integrate with your SIEM, with your security information and event management system. And we're mentioning here the IPsec and WireGuard protocols. Using advanced protocols, it's a key. The legacy VPN solutions are based on old protocols that are not secure enough, and we can rely on that. So maybe that's what I should have start with, the fact that adopting solutions that are based on the advanced security protocols, that's one of the most important things. And again, that's how I see it. That's how I think companies should work in this current situation. And actually by using this architecture, we're making sure to enforce the basics of cybersecurity. We're talking about least privilege to be able to manage policies in the network, or microsegmentation of the network, which means that we are giving access to each user only for the specific segment, for a specific segment or specific resources. And by that, we're actually preventing lateral movement of an unauthorized users in case they were able to hack the perimeter and get access into the network itself. So I think, yeah, I mean, we're okay with the time, Guy?
We're okay with the time. We have additional 5 minutes to talk, and then we'll move to the Q&A. I would like to take advantage of just finish the 5 tips, which I'm sure help the audience. And I would like to ask another question. How can a company or an individual tell that they have been hacked? If they have, what should they do immediately after? Maybe we'll start with Sivan.
You know, I think, I mean, Nikki and I, we did an interesting workshop last year, how to, I mean, cracking passwords with Kali Linux. I think that's what we've done. And we started with presenting a slide with the website, Have I Been Pwned? You can just Google it, and you can put on your email and check if your accounts have been hacked. I mean, many times you can know that right after you're clicking an email, mainly if it's, you know, when ransomware or something like that. And maybe I didn't mention the fact that people are using more web applications based on RDP protocols, remote desktop protocols, SSH, and other web applications that makes people being more vulnerable now. So using Wi-Fi, I mean, the combination of using Wi-Fi and remote desktop protocol to connect remotely, if you don't have, you know, the right solution, that's so easy to hackers to exploit. I mean, many times you're not gonna be aware that you have been hacked, or that hackers got access to your personal information and resources. But, you know, many times, if it's a ransomware, you'll get a notification that all your data is encrypted until you pay something. But maybe Nikki, what do you have to say about that? The question.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think I think there's not like one answer there, right? But I think that one thing that you can do is turn on all sorts of logging in all sorts of services that you're using, right? So if you have Office 365, like audit logging is, I have no idea what licensing, you know, everyone really has, but you sometimes really have to explicitly turn on audit logging in Office 365 to get that trail. You know, just understanding like how to turn this stuff on. So if you do feel like there's been an incident, you have a place to look, right? That's like, otherwise, if you have nowhere to look, like you're kind of dead in the water there. So, you know, if you have all these cloud services, Box, Salesforce, you know, AWS, I mean, AWS has all sorts of logging capabilities. Turn all of that on, or at least try to figure out how to turn all of that on right now. And even if you can't get into a central service, you at least have logs, right? And so you could sort of trace steps and figure out like what may or may not have happened. So I think, you know, that would be like the sort of more enterprise, small, you know, or corporate answer to that question. Personally, I think, you know, Sivan, you covered that well, right? Like, I mean, you know, your account would get taken over and you'd probably realize that pretty quickly, you know, and, you know, you'd be able to sort of undo that in a variety of ways. But, you know, logging is a really important component here. So, yeah.
Thank you. So it's thank you for the answer. It's exactly 12:35, exactly on time. We have 10 minutes for questions from the audience. I can see here one question. What is the best way to get into a bug bounty program? Nicole, you can start.
Yeah, that's for Nicole.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of them out there. So HackerOne, right? If you just Google HackerOne, they have a bunch of, you know, different companies that sort of say like, they participate in this, and anybody can sort of, try to hack some of these companies and see if there's like, a reward that you can get. So HackerOne is a pretty good place to start there. And they also have tutorials to like help people, get more into understanding the techniques that you would deploy to try to be successful at a bug bounty. Yeah. Everyone's bored now, so it's a good time to start learning.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
Taking
not
free
bored.
courses online.
Yeah, exactly.
Library, Udemy, Coursera, all those websites.
Okay. So next question, someone asked exactly 10 minutes ago, does IP whistling help the security of Zoom?
I mean, I don't think you can IP.
Can you do that?
I'm not sure. I don't think so, because if you're, mainly if you're using a VPN, Nikki, so there is a static IP that.
Yeah, I'm just looking this up. I mean, it looks like you can, if you have a firewall, you could obviously do stuff like that.
Yeah, but then that's the IP of the firewall. I mean, I don't think that Zoom has an IP. It's a software.
Yeah, it's a SaaS software.
It's a software, yeah. So, I mean, I think that the tips that we gave, using passwords, using waiting room, and make sure that only the hosts can share the screen, those are the main tips to control the Zoom meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And another question is, how frequently are you doing team huddles / check-ins?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that question varies, right? But I mean, I think what, most people are trying to do is be as connected as possible, right? And talk and see each other's faces and be mindful of what's going on in the world. So we're doing them a lot. Yeah. Every day.
Yeah, same. I mean, as I mentioned before, I feel we're lucky to have the option to connect with people remotely. That pandemic happened in the middle of the digital transformation age. I think we're lucky and fortunate to live in this, to have the option to connect and having those fascinating webinars and yeah, I mean, we're doing it during the whole day.
Another question, it's about a VPN. So what's the best and most secure VPN that you will recommend? I'm not sure that you can recommend one, but it's continue with, I know also that many VPN companies selling our information. What do you think about that?
So, I mean, you should, before you choose the vendor, you need to make sure that he is aligned with all the regulations. I mean, SOC 2 Type 2, ISO, HIPAA compliance, PCI DSS. I mean, there are many things that you should check before you choose the right solution. And again, I think that using a solution that, have advanced security protocols, like I mentioned before, IPsec, site-to-site tunnels, based on zero trust model. I didn't mention that, but that's an important thing to say. We're talking all the time about holistic cybersecurity approach and layered cybersecurity approach. And the zero trust model actually includes 3 key components. First, we verify the identity of the user, then we verify the device, and then we create microsegmentation of the network, or have the option to manage policies. So using a solution that gives you, an option to enforce all those basics of cybersecurity, that's the right thing to have. And again, a cloud-based solution, which is cloud agnostic, firewall agnostic, and scalable. In this situation, a scalable solution, that's the best thing to have.
Yeah.
Okay. Nicole, you want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're talking about like the use case of a personal VPN to deal with the fact that your Wi-Fi connection, like if you're in public Wi-Fi, I would hope that I don't know what everyone's situation is, but generally, like if you're on your home network, it's not like you're on a untrusted Wi-Fi connection. It's just not as rigorously controlled as a corporate environment. So I'm not sure that a personal VPN is like the right tool in your home environment for you to increase your security. Again, I don't know if everyone's on a shared Wi-Fi and there's 300 people in your building, maybe it's a different story, but generally I think that's probably not true in most cases. But as far as corporate VPNs go, yeah, I mean, like if, it's probably a little late in the game now to make a big change in how your corporate VPN is set up. I don't know, unless I guess it depends on how long this goes on for. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the problems with like, sort of moats and castles and point-to-point VPNs is that they fall over, right? They have bandwidth that's limited and they fall over and they fail closed and, everyone's, that's it. It just doesn't work anymore until someone goes and fixes it, right? So, there might be an argument that, point-to-point connectivity is problematic during an environment that we're in right now and might be problematic going forward. But yeah, I think we're, sort of learning that, and we have been learning that lesson, right, since the cloud migration, right? A lot of things have left the building, right? Like email servers, web servers, they're all in the cloud now. So I think, that traditional networking infrastructure, maybe that's next to sort of leave the building. Yeah, not sure though. This is just all.
Yeah, and I actually think it's an opportunity. Now, Nicole, what do you think? I think it's an opportunity for companies to, do the adjustments and moving to cloud and, as long as they can in terms of, regulation and those other things. But I think it's an opportunity for companies to adopt more cloud-based infrastructures, because I think that the situation it's gonna continue now for a little bit longer, and then the world is not gonna be the same.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, yeah, the same reason why a lot of on-prem infrastructure has moved to the cloud is the same argument that you'd have in, your networking environment. I agree. I think, that's, I don't know. I mean, that's sort of maybe the last thing to rip out because everyone's so used to that traditional people go to the office kind of environment and here's this controlled network. And so I don't know what that looks like in a hybrid mode where people are mostly remote, or once this is over, people are half and half. There's going to have to be some, architectural considerations around what that looks like going forward. But yes, I hear you. The point is valid. They are single points of failure or multiple points of failure.
Okay, thank you. We get a question every 30 seconds. Let's try to answer.
People like us. We should do that more. I mean, so fun in the middle of
the audience want to get the page link to see if they hacked the one that you mentioned in the before.
Oh, so maybe
we can share it in the thank you email that everyone will get. We will.
Yeah, I'll share it with you. Have I been found?
Yes.
Maybe I.
Webinar. And the second question is, if you are using mostly cloud services, is there a way to gather information to a central logging system like a SIEM?
SIM, yeah, of course. That's what I showed in my previous slide, that Perimeter 81 at least, and as you can see here in this slide, there is an option to get logs from the management platform Perimeter 81 and to import them to your SIM solution. So that's the huge advantage of having a cloud-based solution. It's easy to get logs, imports, to integrate with your current SIM solution and to, instead of managing too many different dashboards, so it gives you in real time the option to have the logs to, again, complete visibility of the network in order to respond in real time. That's the most important thing, right? We want to respond in real time. So of course, that's definitely the option and the huge advantage of having a cloud-based VPN.
Okay. So it's exactly 12:45 in New York. We are all of us in New York City. So I would like first to thank the audience that joined us today. And I hope it was helpful for you and valuable. And we hope to see you in our next webinar in this series of events. I would like to thank our partners to the event, Sivan Teila, Perimeter 81, Cyber Ladies NYC, Nicole, thank you for joining us, the Israeli Economic Mission, Tamar Shlimak, and Inon Elroi. And thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day at home. I'm sure most of you are at home. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was so fun. Okay.